Welcome back to the Means of Grace podcast, where faith meets real life and context meets connection. I'm Jesse Ennis, and today we're talking about something that's not only close to home, but also incredibly important for communities everywhere. We're talking about the power of connection in the face of crisis. Hurricane Helene swept through the mountains of North Carolina, leaving behind devastation that tested the strength of our communities. But what came out of that storm was something incredible, a swift and compassionate response. So today we celebrate the response of the church that has been rooted in connection. This is a story of neighbors helping neighbors, churches stepping up, and faith communities coming together when it matters the most. With me, as always, is my co-host, Pastor John Yeager. Our esteemed guests are two people who felt a particular call to action. That's Reverend Sally Queen and Reverend Nathan Arledge. Excuse me. They'll be sharing how they and their communities sprang into action right after the storm, how the connections they had made a difference, and how in times of great difficulty, these bonds sustain us. It's an entire episode of Strangely Warmed this time. So whether you're joining us in the car, the kitchen, the couch, or wherever this podcast finds you today, allow yourself to be inspired because we have a long road ahead. John?
Thanks, Jesse. Yeah. I want to get started. I want to keep this local. I can't wait to dive into our conversation with Sally and Nathan. But I want to kind of catch us up. There are still people, I think, going, what happened? How is this that bad? And we are grateful. We had Brad Panovich, our very own in Charlotte, who took some time after the storm to just talk about what happened, kind of break it down a little bit. So I want to give you that, his version of it a little, mixed in with a little of our own firsthand accounts, and how it mirrors the 1916 Great Flood. And some of you out in the mountains, although you won't remember it, have still memories that have been passed down through generations. I know there were signs that were knocked down by the present flood that used to say in remembrance of the 1916 flood. So Hurricane Helene was particularly devastating in the mountains due to a combination of meteorological factors and geological ones. First, the region was already saturated from what they call a predecessor rain event. So it's a small or large rain event that comes right before a deluge. So the ground's already soaked up, which occurred about 36 hours before the hurricane hit. It left the ground unable to absorb any water and setting the stage for some extreme flooding, bringing as much as 30 to 35, some have even reported 40 inches of rainfall. The topography of Western North Carolina worsened the situation. The mountains that we so love and keep us cool amplified the rain as the moisture-laden air from Helene was forced upwards, creating a phenomenon called orographic lift. Not making things up. This process squeezes even more rain out of the system, particularly along the ridge lines. Additionally, Helene's high winds that reached up to 106 miles an hour caused a lot of power outages before the storm hit. A lot of people missed the alerts and the important announcements and the breaking minute-by-minute news because they were already without power. So I hope that answers some of the questions of why didn't people get out. It's complicated. Additionally, the high winds and the mudslides and all of the things created down trees, down power lines, making rescue operations incredibly difficult. The mudslides in particular. And this is where somebody from Florida, like myself, had a moment of what's going on here? Because when we had a hurricane, it would come in, devastate the area, and we'd all just go rushing in afterwards. I mean, thousands and thousands of volunteers, and there were no bottlenecks. There were no, you can't get to that area. No, you just go. So, as Brad said, Western North Carolina really became a bunch of islands for several days following the storm, completely cut off from the outside world. We've heard stories about people who didn't know how bad the storm was for a good week and a half because they were in it. They were there, and they assumed that it was local, but it wasn't. Some of you will have knowledge of what was called the Great Flood of 1916 in western North Carolina. Very similarly, a tropical system came in early July of that year, and then about a week later, a Category 4 hurricane hit. The flooding was immense, and most of the stories of where the waters went are very similar to the stories we're hearing now. We're all connected. I can't wait to talk to our two guests, Sally Queen, who is from those beautiful, beautiful mountains and has some stories that she would like to share and answer some questions for us. We also have Nathan. Nathan went to Western. He has connections to those gorgeous mountains too. So I can't wait to dive into this conversation of the perspective of people who are from there, and how people sprang into action after this, as we have seen time and time again in human history. So Jesse, I want to turn it over to you for our first questions here for Sally and Nathan.
Yeah, absolutely. So
and give them a chance to introduce themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. So we recognize that that, as we said earlier, like this is going to take a long time. There's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of work that's already been done as well. And so I want to especially say thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to be here with us for the podcast today. So Sally, if we can start with you, if you could introduce yourself, but then also we'd like to hear, what were your thoughts leading up to the storm?
So good afternoon. I'm Sally Queen, and I serve as the senior pastor at Myers Memorial United Methodist Church in Gastonia. And as John has already mentioned, I was raised in Cullowhee, North Carolina. So raised in the mountains of western North Carolina, it's deeply a part of who I am. Certainly you can probably hear that from my accent as well. So prior to the hurricane, I have to be really honest and just sort of say, like, we hear about storms that are going to happen all the time. And I just sort of continue living my life. And I'm a mom of 3 kids. I'm married. I serve this church. Like, I was just doing my life. And then
I think that's a lot of people's truths too.
And then my kids are, getting out of school, or they're spending Thursday in a tornado warning setting in school. And then the school's out on Friday. And so then my life is disrupted. So just to be real and honest, like Jesse, those were my first thoughts.
Reverend Nathan Arledge is here as well. Sally, thank you for sharing. Nathan, could you introduce yourself and give us your insights as well? What were your first thoughts leading up to this storm?
For sure. Nathan Arledge. I grew up in Hendersonville, actually. So after it hit, of course, it was, oh my gosh, all the news that came from there. But prior to the storm, very similar to Sally, it was, you see the news, you see the event. I am a rabid Atlanta Braves fan. And so it was at a time at a very pivotal point in their season. Where I was thinking, oh my gosh, these games are going to get rained out. Where could they go play? Could they go to Texas? Could they go to some indoor and all this? And then the storm hit, and we saw the devastation, and it did a centering real fast of, oh gosh. My wife is a principal in the Charlotte-Mecklenburg school system. And so we were getting news that, school's going to be canceled. And now we have these worried children again, and another event in their lives. And so it's this just true chaotic sense that occurred quickly. And as you've already shared, it's going to take long recovery moments of, and it's not going to be quick. So I'll say that as much as I can during this for all those who are hearing. This is not quick. It's not going to recover quick. It's not going to relieve quick.
And I appreciate that because I think one of the things, we'll talk about this in a minute too, but like within the first 24 hours of your response, it's like this kind of emotional, like visceral response. Like for a lot of folks, it's like we've got to do something. But life continues. Life gets in the way, especially for many of us who weren't as nearly as affected by the storm. And so we do definitely want to keep it in front of people's minds so that we can continue to get the help that we need over time. But Sally, can you tell us, what was it like in those first 24 hours after the hurricane hit, and how did you and your community begin to navigate the aftermath?
Yeah, so a couple of things. One is that once I realized the magnitude and that, like, these are my people, these are my mountains, this is home. My family had a family group text, and we're sort of spread out across the Blowing Rock area, Rutherford County, Jackson County. And so we're all sort of checking in and texting with each other, like, how are you? Like, then there's pauses of communication and no sort of information. And then it's Saturday, and I'm fine here in Gastonia. But the rest of my life, my people aren't. And it was the oddest and really a difficult day for me, because my kids had 2 soccer games, another had a church youth event. And so we spent the entire day like living our normal lives. And so I've got this internal guilt.
Yeah,
as
there's
I'm
a
living,
lot of that. I've
as
heard
I'm
that
living my normal
from
life.
a lot of people. It seems to be a form of survivor's guilt.
And I'm thinking, why am I sitting on a soccer field cheering on my kid, and there's people I love whose lives have been turned upside down? And so I had to sort of live into that and realize, that my place in this right now is not to experiencing what they're experiencing, and yet I'm called to help. And so immediately, all I could think, I was supposed to preach at a homecoming at a church. They had to cancel that because there was no power. It was a church I had previously served. And so all I could think is, what can I do for those people? And so we collected water here at Myers on that Sunday. And we prayed for each church in the Blue Ridge, Catawba Valley, Appalachian, and Smoky Mountain districts. I mean, here are there's the churches that I got out of the basket. And I remember telling the children in worship that morning to look for the helpers. That's where you were going to see God. And so I feel like that's been my continual message to my people. Our job are to be the helpers. And that's where God's presence is going to be.
I love seeing that basket. You made it tangible for your congregation to pick up the images of the churches and to really put a face, if you will, to the folks who are there. And then I also just love how you kept on saying, these are my people. Yes, absolutely. The family group text, and the broader of that of your people, right? And they're our people because, we do have that connection. We are supposed to lean in with one another. So I like that, Sally.
And that's so interesting. And then, so Nathan, I want to hear yours too, but
yeah,
I feel like this is just a byproduct that maybe we hadn't really truly appreciated of the connection, is how many of us have served. I mean, some of us are from the mountain, obviously y'all, but those of us who aren't, almost all of us have served a church out there. So for so many of us, they really are our people. And I know we're supposed to kind of, do that cut, but this is, I'd never thought of, how important the connection could be in a hypothetical. Like, what if things really got just terrible for one particular area? We come together. So Nathan.
Yeah. So
verse 24.
Yeah. Verse 24. So personal, my mom's house is in Hendersonville, and she was here with us helping with our kiddos.
Oh, wow.
And so it kind of dislocated the feelings of, yes, we are worried, concerned about what's happening or what's going to happen there. And we have family that's down South Georgia. So we were really concerned. And also in some North Georgia places, we have family. So we put our hyper focus on those locations. How is my aunt? How are our cousins? And so that's where our attention went, never thinking truly that it could be as devastating as it was / is in our own hometown. And so it was this pure world, again, back to that, just that chaotic feel and disorienting feel for us. And that's how we engaged those first few hours. Not to mention the fact of my whole backyard here in Charlotte's full of giant trees. So thinking okay, or one of these going to come down. A neighbor literally right across the street had a tree fall on her house. So thinking about how do we help in that regard. And then I was talking with the wonderful Brian Mateer, and I said, what can we do? And this was the Saturday. He's like, I need you to get water. You just got to get water. And I said, all right, done. And so I reached out to our church congregation, very much like Sally, and said, hey, y'all, bring water to church tomorrow. We're going to pray for the water. We're going to send it up to the mountains. And we had connected with Karen Easter Bain up at First Hendersonville and said, hey, we're bringing you water. We got to get you stuff. And that's my home church. First United Methodist Hendersonville is my home church.
Oh.
And big shout out to that congregation and who they are within their DNA. I'm a product of that church. And they've always been outward focused first. And so it made sense. Like, that's where we're going to go. They're going to hub, they're going to distribute, and they're going to do incredible work. And so it happened so fast. And then Sally and I got connected, and fast friendship happened, and we were like, let's do this. Let's keep on figuring out how are we going to keep on responding.
Yeah, Nathan took all of our water up with him that first run. He stopped by here and got our water.
That's right.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It all blurs together, and that's the other thing. Yeah, and it's just like, oh yeah, that's the progress of this. We have to keep on doing it. We have to keep on blurring days together in our responses.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys so much for sharing like those initial steps that you took and how your community began to like navigate that aftermath. I want to encourage anyone who's listening, because I really do feel like the stories that we tell in this season are going to hold us together and remind us of how important the connection is in such a difficult time. So if you've got a moment, if you could leave us a comment whether you're watching this on YouTube or listening through the website or wherever, leave us a comment. Let us know how your church responded. How did you guys respond in the first 24 hours? And also, let us know if there is any ways that we could, other churches near you could participate with you so that we can be a stronger connection together. So we're not kind of spinning our wheels and doing things that aren't really necessary right now. I know a lot of us would like to help, but we just don't know how. So yeah, let's work together on this. Let's share our stories, and let's communicate with each other. John, do you want to take the power of connection?
Yeah. Well, can the two of you speak to a little bit more? Who made the first move? This is gonna be funny. I want to play by play. Who made the first move? Nathan, you or Sally here? This connection that has spawned and really inspired a lot of people in this conference.
I think we're supposed to say Jesus, right? Isn't that the Sunday school answer?
Sounds like a great one to me.
So cliche. So that's a terrible pastor dad answer, right?
So I think beyond Jesus, I think the way it went down is that Nathan and I both had reached out to Brian Mateer and kind of said, "Hey, here's what we're doing." And when it became obvious that my water couldn't be used at the place where I had thought that it would go, which is where I was supposed to go preach, I had said to Brian, "Hey, I've got this water." So then Nathan calls me and was like, "Hey, Brian said you have water." There we go.
The rest is history.
Yeah.
And the rest is history. And then, let's fast forward to it's Monday morning afterwards, and I learned that Nathan's up at 5:00 like I am. And so he's getting a text message from me going, "Okay, what are you doing this week? Here's what I'm doing this week."
Yeah.
I love that.
It's good. That's incredible to find people that are up at 5 a.m. For everybody that burns daylight, like, what are you doing with your life? Kidding, of course. Because they were going to say, I can't stay up late. But Sally texted, "Hey, what are you doing?" And it just continued to build on the opportunities. Okay, I'm hearing this from here. I'm hearing this from here. And then that's an important thing to do as well when you're connecting, or Jesse, as you were saying, like, put comments down. Who are you connecting with? If you're out there soloing it, that's fantastic. Good, great. And you're gonna miss the opportunity for relationship. You're gonna miss the opportunity to perhaps even deliver the right things or know where to go correctly. and then you'll end up with a 5-pound jar of olives, and like no one needs olives right now. And these are real things that happen.
Yeah.
Like, you get bed skirts. No one needs a bed skirt right now. What people need are what's being asked for, and you are able to filter that more in connection. So Sally, in conversations on those 5 a.m. texts, were saying, "Hey, this is what I'm hearing. I concur. This is what's been communicated with me too. All right, let's get our church people mobilized on this. We'll collect, we'll load up, and we'll go." And that's what we're going to continue to do. From collecting things is now waning a good bit. I'm sure it'll spike up to some degree because there'll be other things that we're going to do. We're going to hopefully be able to help people outfit their homes again that was devastated, but that's months down the road. But right now we're going to figure out, okay, where can we go cut trees up? Where can we go muck a house out? Where can we go put up some sheetrock? I mean, things like that. But if you're not in connection with somebody, you're going to get exhausted. This is exhausting work.
Yeah. And to Nathan's point as well, I mean, if you're looking to figure out what is the need right now or what is definitely not the need right now, if you go to the Western North Carolina Conference website, you'll find a lot of information there. If you're one of those folks who get the e-news, you'll get a lot of information there as well. So keep your earlobe to the ground, reach out to one of us if necessary, and let's make sure that our efforts are being coordinated.
And one other thing of like, don't give terrible things for people, right? Do your first fruits. Give your first fruits. No one wants your water chestnuts that you didn't use in that recipe, right? And I'm being terse with that, but I'm okay.
No, please
don't do that. Give the best. Like, go and recognize what you would want your family to have. These are your family. Sally said it earlier. These are our people.
Yeah, and the connection piece, when you said, you'll mess up, we'll miss things, there's also the mystery of we don't know what can spin out of a new connection. Like, y'all just texted over a water. You know what? I got water. And weeks later, look where you are. That could have been one text, and then it could have died. It could have just been, okay, we just did this water thing, but it didn't. So leave room for that. Leave room for, well, if I make this connection, maybe I don't need it. Right? There's some that y'all don't. I'm going to speak for y'all a little bit. Y'all's churches are healthy enough churches. Y'all could have gone it alone. You could have.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah, any one of us could have gone it alone.
But there's a whole lot of power, John, the day that we, in partnership with Dilworth and Park Street and 22 vehicles headed to the mountain.
That was a great day. Yeah.
And again, yes, you're exactly right. Myers Memorial could have sent our own vehicles up there just fine, but there was something powerful about 22. And that is, in my opinion, the United Methodist connection. That's who we're hardwired to be. We're not hardwired to be our own individual congregations. We're part of something bigger. And for all the poor publicity the United Methodist Church has had over the last several years, like at the core of who we are is to be in relationship with each other.
Yeah.
Yes. Amen. Oh, yes. Got chills there. Let's focus in on that and the connection, and how important that is one of the things I've heard is, well, we don't need to connect. And this notion of, well, then don't do it for you. Do it for them. Do it for that other church that might need it. Do it for someone else and just see what happens. And so I want to ask y'all this. Y'all have worked very closely with organizations within, I assume, and beyond the church in these past few weeks. What new connections have you made, and how have some of those played, in your minds, a crucial part in the response, and maybe some of your thoughts going forward?
Yeah, I'll jump in there and put a pin in that, because I think we should come back to it about thoughts going forward. Because this, again, it doesn't term at the end of the recovery and relief efforts and the hyper anxiety of wanting to fix something or provide something in this immediacy, right? Like,
speak to that. Yes. The
connection has, like this, the relationship that Sally and I have quickly formed. What else? What's next? What do we dream of our churches? literally, I think we're about 33 minutes insofar of traffic and everything from church to church. All right, what's in between us? Where can we continue to serve? So that's one dream space that we can actually actualize now. And then the 22 cars from the various different churches. Okay, what else is God calling us to be about in that space? And it goes beyond the disaster. It goes beyond, it's the formation of our people. It's the formation of who we are. It's taking it away from a transactional interaction into a transformational engagement. And that's what this has to be about, is that transformational engagement opportunities, that understanding truly we are better together, and all the spewing of divisiveness and hatred and all that. That's perhaps something that we can heal through this time of connection.
Do you think we've forgotten how to need each other?
No, I just don't think we have the vocabulary or the confidence to name it. I think we are so distant from the vulnerability, and I don't think the language has been formed within the broad, perhaps, church. I mean, we're not going to do a church history of why we're here, but I think that's a loss. I think there is a loss of that. I think from consumerism, church models, to transactional, what is serving me has really stripped us of those words to say, hey, look, we do need each other. We are better together. It's not a flippant statement. It's a reality. And
whether you can see it or not,
that's
whether
right.
you can define it in numbers or, you just still do.
Yeah.
Well, and I wonder how much time we spent talking about connectionalism as apportionments. And that's only a small facet of what it means to be connectional. Like, that's just a drop in the bucket. I mean, an important one.
Sure. Yeah.
That allows us to do a whole lot more together. But that's really not the crux of what connectionalism is.
No. And you would think,
or what it means to model in Acts chapter 2 church, that we live together, we do community together, we eat together, we share life together.
And I wonder, because you're right, I think you hit the nail on the head. We've talked about connection so many times, and I feel like there's a new iteration about every decade, right? We try to flow it. We try so hard to redefine, reconnect, recontribute, rededicate. What if one of the things we're missing is that in times of crisis, that's when our connections are built.
Mm-hmm.
And they last decades. And now's that chance.
Yeah.
We have an opportunity here to build something that might last beyond my whole life. Churches might connect so we can rebuild it.
Yeah, I think about, as you were talking, John, I was thinking about like in death, the flood of people come right after the death. And they come, with their casseroles, and they come with their cards and their letters, and then time goes on, and sometimes people forget. I think the beauty of what we hold as a denomination is we're supposed to be connectional. So right now is the death, is the hard crisis. We've all flocked together, and hopefully we can find a way to continue to do life that way.
You don't want years from now us to be saying, hey, I haven't seen you since that funeral.
Right.
Yeah, you want us to become close.
Hey, Nathan, remember you when you were my best friend back in 2024? Great to see you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
that's exactly right.
I've heard someone say before, never let a good tragedy go to waste. And I wonder, we cannot stop these tragic things from happening in life.
That's right.
But they are an opportunity for us to build on some of the beautiful things that we've talked about today, namely the connection, right?
Yeah.
Let us not allow this tragedy to come and go and not build something beautiful out of these circumstances.
That's right. Be a preacher, Jesse.
I'll try.
Yeah, I think that we do need to lean into that, Jesse, of not missing the opportunity of perhaps remembering our to whom we are created. We're all created at the triune nature, right? So God, in God's very self, is community, and so we have to lean into that. I also offer a slight caution, I hope majority of us and those who hear this know this. of where we don't want to turn the tragedy into this perverse, voyeuristic, opportunistic, right? And I think we as good leaders and we as strong connection also play a very important role of that prevention. We get to demonstrate what does it mean to really show up well with our neighbors in tragedy, where it's not just walking around and taking photos of things and then trying to generate a GoFundMe. Like, no, our connection is, again, had already been in the works. Brian was already burning up the road west for hours, 15-hour day on that Saturday when he and I were talking. And I know when he and Sally talked as well. And we have that connection of trust, of relational. And so that's my only thing about caution on that, is that when a tragedy does happen, that, okay, if you get committed to it, stay committed, stay consistent, communicate and have clarity on that. That's so key in this response.
I think you said trust, and I think I just heard that ringing throughout everything you were saying, and how trust will break down without all the other things you were saying there. Yeah. And gosh, let's talk for just a second about how important trust and faith and believing in who's doing the saving and who's doing you alluded to it earlier, Nathan. It's sad. There's a lot of turning on each other, and it's a part of our political atmosphere and the season we live in and all the things.
Our partisan atmosphere.
Absolutely. There is an election coming up. So it's maybe just bad timing there, but we can, I don't want to say fight that, maybe fight's not the right word, but we can push against that with, I think, everything you were just talking about, doing this work genuinely.
I think it's more than that. I think it's truly that good old hymn, there's a balm in Gilead, right? That the church's responsibility in these fissures and these divided spaces is to truly be a healing balm. That where we know that the sad reality of what happened with FEMA and the mountains and the reactionary responses to that, where they had to pause from doing really good work. And now they're back up and doing what they have always done faithfully. The church can be the presence. The church is supposed to be the healing presence. The church is supposed to be the doors wide open. Come and know that you are cared for. Come and know that you are beloved. Come and know that in the hardest times, we're here. And we're here together. Sally and I are here together. We're going to be consistent in this in our partnership.
And go ahead, Sally.
I was just to say, and to add to that, one of the things that mountain people have taught me, having been a product of the mountains, is that mountain folk, and I'll consider myself one, are resourceful and resilient.
Yes.
And they need us to simply come alongside of them.
Yes.
They don't need us to solve their challenges. They need us to come alongside. They are resourceful. They are resilient.
Can you expand on that? Not for a long time, but maybe just expand on that as to how maybe some people who are feeling frustrated might be to like you said, be a balm, right? We can smooth this over. Can you expand on that just a little?
Well, perhaps it's asking what they need, which we've already talked about that, and trusting what they need, and how can we provide that. And trusting if they say stop, they're not trying to be rude, ugly, disrespectful, unwanting. They've got something. They've got something.
They know their truth.
Yeah.
And I don't typically point out the name of the podcast as the Means of Grace podcast, but I think this is an opportunity for us to live into the means of grace in this moment, to recognize that we have individual and communal responsibilities, that there are times during this very, very long season where we are going to have to practice some self-denial, put God first, get down on our knees when we can't when we've done whatever we can do physically, but also get down on our knees and pray, and motivate, create a vision for the folks that are working with us, and remind everyone that we are working not only alongside the folks in the mountains, which is incredibly important, but we're also working alongside God and representing the work of God in the world, and using this as an opportunity to grow in your faith, and to not forget that every time we answer the call to love God and neighbor, it's an opportunity for us to grow in our faith. And in a hurting world, regardless of what the world is hurting from, the world needs a sign that God's people are still loving the world. And this is a great opportunity for us to do that.
Yeah, just be present.
Yeah.
Like making yourself present and having that presence goes right exactly with what Sally said, right? Just be present with the folks. Let them guide you.
Mm-hmm.
God's present with us. Why don't we let God guide us?
And my best way to define grace is using the word charis, which literally means gift. And right now we're showering people with gifts. And if what God has showered us with is the very best gift that God could give. And so our giving should be the best that we can give. Whether that's our sitting alongside of the suffering, whether that's donating a brand new blanket and not the one that has 14 holes in it, it's a gift. It's the best that we can give. That's grace.
Keep your moths at home. Don't give those moths back.
I mean, I don't want that. Why should somebody else have that?
Exactly. And the feeling that you get when you get something brand new is just different from the feeling you get. It is.
God, if God could drop down cans of food or blankets, it's not going to be the water chestnuts and the holy blanket. It's just not going to be.
Keep your water chestnuts at home.
And keep your holy blankets to yourself.
That's the subtitle of this episode. Keep your water chestnuts and holy blankets.
And your holy blankets.
I've been telling people, being kind of coordinating some of the stuff going around this district, I told people that are collecting a lot of things and there's nowhere for the water to go, put it in the back of your sanctuary. Let it be a part of your worship service for a few weeks. Let it soak into you. Because they are all, well, I don't know where to put it. I don't know where to put it. Put it right in the front, man. I mean, let it affect you. Let it be a part of who y'all are.
Put it there where people are going to ask questions, and you
that's
can
right.
say,
put it in the middle of the aisle. Let them walk around it.
This is how we respond. This is how we respond faithfully. So speaking of responding faithfully, go ahead, Sally. I don't want to cut you off.
I was just going to say, and if somebody comes up in your own community who needs some water in the in-between time, heaven forbid, give them the water.
Oh, that's right. Somebody could just walk in and go,
yeah,
I needed that one.
It doesn't have to go to somebody in Western North Carolina that's sitting in church and somebody needs some water. Let's give it to them.
Let's get some water.
Right. I want to hear next month people doing, oh, we did this big event. We had all this water. So we did this great, huge event in our neighborhood and it was amazing. Now you're cooking.
So we've talked a lot about the resources, but we also know that it takes a lot of hands. Nathan, could you tell us a little bit about like organizing volunteers? How did that go?
Through a lot of just staying on with messaging, truly just like in the early stages, so that 24 hours of people knowing it's going to happen, just respond and say, hey guys, look, we're going to respond. We're going to be guided. We're going to be directed. Again, big shout out to Brian Mateer. I told him, I said, look, whatever you tell us to do, we're going to do it. We're going to follow your direction on this.
And Ben Rogers, shout out to him too. Disaster relief. He's been on the road too.
Oh, fantastic, Ben. And so, and then just staying up with the stories with your people, staying up with the transparency, with that consistency, like as I said earlier, is very important so that they know what's happening. It's important for our people to know where that 48 pack of water went, and to be able to hook it back and to make it personal, because Aunt Betty might not be able to go up to the mountains and help carry and unload a truck, but she was able to hit that Amazon purchase button
right.
to get those diapers up there. And she wants to know that. And so then you pop her a picture. It doesn't take anything to just tell these quick stories, quick bits that will inspire others to get engaged. And then one thing that I've been really big on is you're just one ask away. I learned this early in my life, and I've never let it go. You're one ask away from something really cool happening. Or you're one ask away from something small and meek happening, which is beautiful as well. And so a quick story to that of being able to fold in the broader community. I had a guy in the church say, "Hey, look, I've got this giant dump truck. How can we use it? What can we do with it?" And I said, "Well, I mean, I'll find out." And he wanted to get water up there. So we got 6 pallets of water, and he took it to Skyland United Methodist Church. That's pretty cool. That would have taken 126 cars to do, right? So using the gifts. Right across the street from Harrison United Methodist Church is an incredible pizza joint. And we had a person shoot me the name of the owner and said, "Hey, look, this guy wants to help with relief. Just here you go." And he's like, "Okay, I want to go up and give 390 pizzas away." It has this big pull-behind food truck that did wood-fired pizzas and gave out 390 pizzas for a full day at a middle school. It's fantastic. It's just making the ask. That's all it takes. Be personal, be relational. If you're in ministry, it's what it's about.
I love that. Sally, can you tell us a little bit about how you interacted with volunteers and how volunteers stepped up in your community as well?
Sure. So one of the things that I learned during COVID was the importance of getting the word out to people, that people genuinely and sincerely want to help. They want to be involved, but they have to get the word to them. And so we started working on some streams of communication that went out, not just our weekly email, but went personally out to members of the congregation. And, I started communicating to a few people who communicated to a few who had a few more. And so that was a way that we tried to be as broad as we possibly could. And if somebody tells me they want to drive a vehicle up to the mountains, I put them on a list and I make sure they get asked. If somebody says, "Hey, once we can start, going to do some cutting of trees," I've got them on a list. I make sure they get asked. I think we have to be responsive to our people. Outside of my office is a huge whiteboard that has a bajillion different things on it that
I love that whiteboard. And I had a church took a picture of that, and I was like, that's what I need.
I had a church member say to me, "You're juggling so much right now." Well, I'm going to keep on juggling so that you can be the hands and feet of Jesus. And
absolutely.
So anyway, that's what we're doing.
So Jesse has been really big into failure lately. That sounds great, doesn't it? Jesse has been curious about the concept of being willing to fail, being brave enough to fail.
Thank you so much.
And how?
Thank you so much for elaborating on that. Thank you for elaborating on that, because what you said originally sounds like I've just been failing at everything I do.
That's right. He's just been obsessed with failure.
You too.
You too. I didn't see you at the meeting.
I love that.
Yeah,
I love that.
So, but I love it. And I want this segment to start. So, where has failure? Where have you failed? Where have you been willing to fail? Have you seen failure in these moments that has helped? That have you gone, "Oh gosh, okay, now I know that particular thing," or a time where you were willing to go all the way somewhere and it just didn't work for no reason. It just ended up that particular plan didn't work.
Yeah, help us to learn from your mistakes, if you will.
So I think that's what I did learn during COVID. When the world got really small, really fast, it became the work of our staff. And our staff was sorting the things and getting the things out to people who were in need. And I'm not doing that again. The laity are capable and need to be freed and empowered to give. And, and I can make excuses for why it happened the way it happened, but that wasn't what I learned from that. Is that people need and want to be involved.
I love that. Nathan?
Yeah, it's hindsight from
Right.
having done this type of work for so long as well, and it's not saying no quick enough, and then being the open arms of sure we'll take that, sure we'll take that, sure we'll take your moth infested blanket, and then you're ending up filling up your own dumpster. Sorry, folks, that's what happens, and you waste energy, you waste time. A key part of this as well is being efficient with people's times and with your own time, and doing that with a level of excellence is incredibly important, because you don't want to wait. People have time. People have a little bit of time, and you want to be able to speak to exactly. So I've learned through the years, just say no up front. Like, no, we're not taking your water chestnuts. Stop it. Go take them back. No, we're not going to take all these jars of honey or whatever else it might be. I mean, there's just things like, just say no, and it's okay. There's power in no. There's a gift in that as well. Set up the guardrails. And then also, I think, Jesse, to your curiosity of failure, fail forward in those guardrails, in that you are staying connected, in that you're following the directions and the lists that are being asked for, the times that you're being requested to be present. Don't be afraid to fail. Otherwise, you're just going to recluse back into this general malaise, and that doesn't help anybody.
I would say one of the things that I personally failed at in the beginning was not listening well enough.
What'd you say?
I would say not listening well enough. Oh, he got me. He got me. No, I feel like what so many of us do is that we see the need and we want to fill the need right away.
Yeah.
We're doers.
And we're doers, exactly. Not just hearers. And thankfully, the conference communicated quickly and effectively, and so it was great. We had already planned on having folks take stuff up the mountain, and we were gathering things already, and I think that's all great. But it was so helpful when I finally decided, when Dan Pizzette was having one of his Zoom meetings, to jump in on the Zoom meeting and hear about these checkpoints that we have at these churches where we can take things, and big old trucks will come and take a lot more than we can take, so that we're not congesting the road, so that we're not the very few roads that are still left, and so we might have jumped the gun a little bit, but thankfully the connection came through, and we were able to participate in everything that was going on. And then also, hearing and being reminded that giving right now is one of the best ways that we can support, because financially, through UMCOR, we can those finances can be used specifically for what the need is, whatever the need may be. And so yeah.
But you can give on the conference website. First, when you go right to the conference website, you can give straight to the conference. And that's the money we are using for a lot of those relief efforts.
Yeah. And we are going to make sure that is in our show notes as well. Take it away, John.
Yeah.
Well, if you want to throw when you talk about show notes or whatever, I'm happy for people to reach out to me.
Great.
It's Nathan. Just, you guys can throw my email. It's nathan@harrisonchurch.org.
Make a connection.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I don't have all the right answers. I don't even know if I have any correct answers, but I'm happy to share my failures and where I've found friction that does work.
I love that.
Love it. So we have viewer mail. We've got Savannah. We have a message from Savannah in Hickory. She is at First Hickory United Methodist Church. She is the youth director. She was Savannah Jones, and because when I was an associate in First Silva, and she was one of the youth at the time. And at the time, she was Savannah Jones, but now she's Savannah Jones Marr. So this is from her. As she is the youth director at First UMC Hickory, and she was talking with her youth about the storm. And this is what she has for us. Recently, our church has been actively involved in providing support following the devastation in Western North Carolina. Having been born and raised in Silva, this mission is particularly personal for me, and I am deeply moved by the efforts of those coming together to help our neighbors in need. With First United Methodist Church Hickory now serving as an UMCOR drop-off point, the acronym being mentioned daily, in that, I've realized that many people may not fully grasp the mission of UMCOR or how it stands apart from other relief organizations. As a church community, I think it's important for us to be able to explain UMCOR to our young people. Could you share some insights on the best way to explain UMCOR, especially to youth? What makes UMCOR distinct? So I'll bounce this around. I sent a message to Brian Mateer about it because I said, how do you want me to answer this? And his main message revolved around, we are UMCOR. In the United States, there's only 3 staff and 2 consultants for the whole country. UMCOR in the U.S. provides funding, a tremendous amount of funding for us to get our hands dirty. So the main message that he wanted to get out is that we are UMCOR here in the United States. So there's tons of great stuff to dig from that. But that's the main message, is if you're not seeing, dozens and dozens and dozens of UMCOR jackets out there, the way you see, maybe FEMA jackets kind of thing, it's not because we're not using UMCOR money. Okay. UMCOR money is being used to get grants, to hire staff, to handle the disaster, to buy supplies, and to start a long-term process here of cleanup and then eventually rebuild. So that's the first part that I wanted to get out for your answer there, Savannah. I hope that's a good start. Do y'all have any personal experience with UMCOR or thoughts about their efforts here?
A couple of things that I might add is that UMCOR is usually like first on the ground and the last to leave in many disaster situations. And the other thing that I want our people who are United Methodist to hear is that when we give to UMCOR in a disaster, 100% of that donation is going to that disaster, because we're already connected in a way that those staff members, their salaries are being paid in other ways through our connection, so that whatever one gives to UMCOR in response to Helene is going straight to Helene. And I think
they don't have a staff to pay. I mean, like we said, they have a very small staff, and the idea is that money comes back around and comes back to you in these moments.
It's direct. I mean, it's direct impact. It's what we've talked about the whole time. Connection. When you have connection, you have this transformational relationships. You know that UMCOR is going to be right in there with it. We know, Savannah, to that end of you're wanting to have your students learn about growing closer together, being bound together in their faith, and seeing that flourish for themselves. This is one of those iterations where faith is really flourishing, where we know that you're investing. As you invest in your theological teaching of the students, it's part of that outcome is you want them to be good stewards of their personal gifts to help others and to walk alongside. That's what UMCOR does. It's just an outward expression of the United Methodist Church in hurting communities.
Yeah, and this is your chance to be a part of it. You can, with UMCOR money, you can go out and be a mission to do mission work and to do rebuilding in West North Carolina. When I first saw what he asked me to put, I thought of Pope Francis's quote that said, "You pray for the hungry, then you feed them." That's how prayer works. And I think about that with UMCOR. They're no, you give and then you go work, then you go do the work.
Yep,
that's how it works.
Absolutely.
Get your hands dirty.
And to her question, and I think your answers were phenomenal, but also in the Methodist Church, we love our acronyms. UMCOR stands for United Methodist Committee on Relief. So for those of you who are not sure what that acronym
somebody's writing his
stands
paperwork.
I'm writing papers. Y'all pray for me. And it's a great reminder that every unified act of service draws our connection closer. right? And we do want to celebrate that we're drawing our connections closer in this time, whether it's through community meals or ongoing relief efforts. Those connections are what makes us strong. There are also stories on the Western North Carolina Conference website there for our encouragement as well. And so we invite you guys to keep sharing your stories, but also to keep reading and keep listening to these stories as well. Y'all know how the algorithm works, right? When you see us post something, share it, like it, comment on it. Let's keep these good stories flowing. We are human beings. We survive on our stories, and we need to tell the stories of what's happening here today, because I think God is up to something beautiful, even though we are facing a tragedy. But as we close today, I want to thank Reverend Sally Queen and Reverend Nathan Arledge. I don't know why I have to slow down every time I say that, but Reverend Nathan Arledge. I want to thank you guys so much for sharing your insights, for sharing your experiences. I know some of these stories might be really raw. I know we're still sitting in these stories. We're kind of writing them as we're going along, but they remind us that even in the midst of disaster, hope can rise through the power of our connection. And we need to hear that. We need to hear that all the time.
Don't do it alone. Don't
do it alone.
Don't.
You know, I like to think of scripture as being unfinished, and that we are the people who are continuing that story. And so thank you so much for sharing your story and allowing us to see the ways that God is continuing God's story from creation till now. Because these are the moments when our faith becomes more than just words. More than just words on a page. It becomes action. It transforms lives. And so as the weeks become months, the needs of our brothers and sisters in the mountains will adapt. It will change. And so we want you to, first and foremost, do not lose heart. Do not become apathetic. Keep asking the question, how can you be part of something bigger, especially when challenges arise? Whether it's through your local church or your community groups, or whether you have the power to make a difference, you are always needed, and we will always appreciate everything you do. So thank you for listening to the Means of Grace podcast. We really, really do hope that you are inspired. Don't forget to subscribe and to share this episode, to join us next time, as well as we continue to explore faith in action. And we will continue to remind you of ways that you can participate as we continue to serve the Western North Carolina area throughout this tragedy. Until then, take care and stay connected. God bless.